Greetings and peace, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am honored and always privileged to be joined by my brother Matt Douglas from the Fatimiyya Sufi Order, who always returns in these series of podcasts and conversations to teach us and give us insights from his world experience. And today, brother Matt Douglas returns to talk about the current Israel Palestine situation that's going on in the world and how where it's leading in the future. So, without further ado, Noor alaikum to brother Matt, and thank you as always.
Thank you, Lakem Noor Salman. Glad to be here as always. Um, yeah, definitely. Occupied Palestine is the hot topic nowadays, um, as it should be. Not that there aren't plenty of other legitimate topics, and as though I'll be talking, it's not isolated. You know, the world's all interconnected. Malcolm X once said that there are some people who just look at their immediate surroundings, and there are people who want to know what's going on the other side of the world. I'm paraphrasing here badly, um, because they understand that what goes on the other side of the world could affect their immediate surroundings, and you can tell what kind of person you're talking to within 5 minutes. Um, so, as people listening to your podcasts, if they've uh, listened to any with me, they know that I'm in Thailand most of the time, as I am now. So I'm going to be giving a slightly different perspective because I'm going to be sharing how this is affecting the Thai population. And uh, because of that, I'll have to get into some of the local Thai politics. Um, and certainly, even though I don't want to give too much importance, although I could certainly craft an argument to make it look that way, that Thailand is a particularly important country in all this. The fact that though there is more than meets the eye when it comes to Thailand's relationship to Israel and Palestine and what's currently going on here, the timing is certainly odd. So I definitely have to scratch my head and say, well, okay, if I hear this in Thailand and X, Y, and Z is going on in Thailand at the same time, how many other countries have a similar story that we're not hearing about? Over to you for now.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And most people in America, what I've noticed, brother Matt, have not traveled extensively the world like you and I have. Most people here have not only left their states, but they've never left their respective counties and towns, and that's where they spend majority of their lives. And unfortunately, their worldview is sometimes shaped by the mainstream news. But thankfully, I see that trend kind of going down now as the Generation Z and the generation after them is kind of waking up to the propaganda. And I think that's very good that you are offering this perspective on how this is affecting the Thai population, because the aspect of the Thai people and news from Thailand or what happens there, that's something not too many people in the US are exposed to. I mean, the only thing that they know here about Thai is the Thai food and the Thai restaurants, but they don't know about the geopolitics and what's going on there and how world events are affecting the people there. So I think that's a unique perspective you're bringing to the table, and I'm just excited to hear.
Oh, gee, thanks. Like I said, I mean, because I'm just the kind of person who doesn't want to rehash too much of what's already been said. I want to put a different angle on it, or kind of what's the point. Although, sometimes that can get a little silly, kind of reminding me of um, George Carlin's line where he says, "You can nail together two things that have never been nailed together before. some schmuck will buy it from you. So I'm certainly not trying to just randomly nail together two things, but I think there's some legitimate perspectives that need to be looked at here. And like I said, because I have this different perspective being in another country, I start, on the one hand, it's very easy to go into the ego and overinflate the importance of where you're at, in this case, Thailand, which probably isn't the case, but I think it is healthy to then, scratch your head and say, well, wait a minute. If I'm hearing this and it's different, or at least putting a angle on the Israel-Palestine story that is not getting airplay anywhere else, for lack of a better term, how much else is not getting airplay? With that said, I'll launch into the basics. Now, first of all, I'll say I'm not going to do too much unless the point really needs to be made. I'll assume that most people listening in are already fairly well versed on the situation of occupied Palestine, not just currently, but the British plotting and the Nakba and all that led up to where we are today. That said, what I'm hearing here in Thailand that's I'm not hearing anywhere else, and I will send you articles that you can link, that you can link to this. Is that there are, I think the number right now is 24. I'll have to check the article, but it'll be attached. 24 Thai nationals who are currently kidnapped, allegedly by Hamas, in Israel, or / occupied Palestine, might be the better word. Now, to give a little perspective here, Thailand tries to be a place that very much wants to maintain their own sovereignty, yet at the same time, and wants, is very militant about that. But beyond that, wants to have very good relations with everybody. It's anywhere from 12 to 19% of the country's income is from tourism. So, they want friendly relations with everybody. There are Thai workers who go all kinds of various places around the world. Not that there's not plenty of work here, but other countries, have higher inflation and hence it pays better. So they go there, they work, they come back, as is done in many places. So they maintain friendly relations with the state of Israel, yet at the same time, being one of the few nations in Asia that was not colonized by the West, and is very proud of that, they also recognize Palestinian statehood, and have done so since, I believe, once it was 2011. I could be off on that, but they do recognize it. So what to me is the big head scratcher and where this story gets interesting is, and I think enough anybody who knows me and who kind of knows us and knows the Fatimiyya knows that we are very much in support of Palestinian liberation. And, we make no bones about that. That doesn't necessarily mean we agree with, any tactic that's used. Not particularly big fans of Hamas. But at the same time, the Palestinian struggle is prominent, and their right to their land back is a more important issue than whether or not we agree with the tactics of some particular Palestinians in that liberation struggle. In this case, Hamas. And there have been many stories, there's much going around online already, of people saying that there's no way that October 7th could have happened without either A, the Israeli military just basically selectively standing down and letting it happen so that they could have an excuse to further invade and commit the genocide they're committing, or that it was engineered, that it wasn't Hamas, but it was a false flag operation. And from what I'm hearing in Thailand, even though it's not being said explicitly, you got to kind of connect the dots. But the fact that 24 Thai nationals have allegedly been kidnapped by Hamas, definitely to me indicates that this could very well be a false flag, because we have a situation between Palestine and the invading state of Israel that gets worldwide attention. And for underdogs like the Palestinians, they know they need some international backing, and kidnapping migrants from another country who have maintained their citizenship and are just there temporarily for work is not people you are going to boost your international cred with if you kidnap them. And even the lowest level goon in Hamas has enough brains to tell the difference between a Thai and an Ashkenazi Jew. So I have to wonder. To me, that supports the notion that maybe this isn't Hamas. Maybe this is a false flag carried out by Mossad or God knows what private contractors or whoever. The Thai foreign minister does want to negotiate. I read an article a few weeks ago that although that he said to do that, he was going to Qatar. So I have, which I'm not fully sure the connection there and why Qatar rather than, I mean, even going to Jordan, Lebanon, would be much more of a place where you could talk from closer proximity. So I'm not sure why, but the idea that Hamas would intentionally kidnap, and if they were caught in the crossfire, that's one thing. By stray bullets, that I could totally buy. But no, they've intentionally, supposedly someone, allegedly Hamas, has kidnapped 24 Thai nationals. And I just have to ask myself, this makes no sense strategically. You don't have any, they don't have any beef with Thailand. All they're going to do is hurt their relations. And now I started trying to form a devil's advocate opinion. It's pretty well known that Israel will kill their own people in order to kill Palestinians, and has. And this has been their policy for quite a while. So at first I thought, well, could they have kidnapped international workers, in this case Thai, to shield them, thinking that maybe Israel wouldn't want to kill the citizens of another country. But then I thought to myself, well, no, wait a minute, dead men tell no tales. Israel would be much more likely to go ahead and just kill everybody and blame it on the Palestinians. So, and I think Hamas would know that, as they've been dealing with them long enough. So I can't find any good, not to say that in war, and this isn't even war, this is more like trying to survive a massacre. When you look at the given capacities of both sides, people are not always rational, but that's going to a point of stupidity that I just can't buy. So I gotta think that, yeah, maybe this is a false flag. Over to you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And one of the mottos of Mossad is that by deception, thou shalt do war. And there was an interview right after October 7 of a former Israeli soldier who now lives abroad. And she had said the same thing. She said, I was part of the border patrol team, like, and that specific area is surveilled on a 24/7 level. There is no way that they would have not known that this was happening. The Egyptian government had warned them in advance that something like this was coming, yet they stood down and allowed it to happen. So it's just like how 9/11, they talked about the dancing Palestinians, but in reality, there were the dancing Israelis who were part of the Mossad with the Urban Moving Company that were arrested at the George Washington Bridge. And they were going to carry out something there as well and blame Muslims for it. So this is not something new that the Zionists and the Mossad are. It's nothing new in their playbook by deception, because Bibi Netanyahu was getting decimated politically and people were about to protest for him to resign and leave. So now you have this conflict and everyone's behind him. So this is like a problem, reaction, solution type of scenario where they create a problem, get a global reaction, and then their solution, which they're trying to justify, is to completely decimate Gaza and absorb it into Israel. That final colonization that they're trying to achieve. But I think this has backfired on them because most communities in the world have protested in large numbers against the Israelis and Zionists. They boycotted their products. What's happening even in Norway has just is in the final process of recognizing Palestine as a state. And there's so many countries in South America who are not even Muslim or Middle Eastern, but Hispanic, Latino, who have a Catholic background. They've all suspended relations with Israel over their killing of innocent civilians. Even the French president, surprisingly, has said that they need to stop killing innocent civilians. So this is there is no justification to what the Zionists are doing, and they're being exposed for who they are, because many people in the American system, they realize, okay, you could draw pictures of the Islamic Prophet and talk about them or do this or that, then they justify it as free speech. But if you say anything against these people, oh, then they come after your employment, they do this, they do that. And people are kind of realizing who really controls everything in America. The American taxpayer is waking up because they're saying, "Oh, if we don't pay our taxes, these people come after us." And and when we request the Republicans or Democrats to work for us and help us as the American people, they don't do anything for us. But when it's Israel, all of a sudden they come together, put their issues aside, pass bills, funding, laws to help the Israelis. So people are waking up on who really controls everything, and it's I think their charade is up, and within our generation we will see occupied Palestine liberated, and hopefully all of these Zionists on a global level are strung up at the Hague as war criminals.
No, they're definitely that. Not that the U.S. The U.S. and Britain and other countries haven't pulled similar operations of starting wars just for the leader to save their image, and that in and of itself is a war crime. You know, when you get into killing innocent people on the level that they have, it is just absolute abomination. I do want to clarify, and given our audience, I'm probably preaching to the choir on this one, but you never know who's listening, so just in case, I do want to, when you talk about who's really in control, um, who really pulls the strings. I don't want this to be mistaken as a Jewish conspiracy, because it isn't a Jewish conspiracy. It's a white power conspiracy.
That's right. It's part of white supremacy. And your average Jew, like the average Jewish friends that I had in the Philadelphia or New Jersey area, they're not a part of this. So you have Zionist extremists who we're talking about, and then you have your average Jewish person who's trying to survive like everyone else. So we're talking about these guys who are part of the white supremacy apartheid system in Israel.
Right. And in a sense, you could say that the name of Judaism itself has been hijacked. Because most of the Jews in the world right now are either Ashkenazi or Sephardic, which are basically European converts. Now, if you look back in the Old Testament, though, Moses, he was raised by the Pharaoh's daughter. When his mom sent him down the river, as the legend goes. And now seeing as how Pharaoh was out to kill Jewish babies, thinking one of them would grow up, take him down, and Moses is able to be raised in the Pharaoh's court without detection. That means that Jews and Egyptians look very similar, if not almost identical. Obviously, it was not easy, if at all possible, by appearances to tell a Jew and an Egyptian apart. And that is, Egypt is in Africa. These are black guys and gals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and what's interesting, and this is a topic I won't get deep into, as it's been done before, but I would suggest anybody who's curious to just do a little Google research on how Israel treats Black Jews, because there are Jewish communities in Ethiopia, Black Africans, who do in fact trace their lineage back to the original Jews. And when they go claiming birthright to Israel, they get denied.
Yep, that's pretty much it. Because a lot of the people in Israel today, it's like even in the South Africa apartheid, many of the white Jews that were there, they went to Israel and carried on with what they were doing in South Africa. And many of the ones in Israel are like Polish, Russian, and other Western and Eastern European converts. They're not indigenous to that land. And Palestinians and the original people of that land before 1948 were Jews, Christians, Muslims. So the Palestinians are not exclusively Muslim, and they all lived peacefully in that land together until, of course, anything the British and the French touch, it gets destroyed, like the
Yep.
Kashmir situation with Pakistan and India. And then, okay, the British came with the Rothschild, and then they did the Balfour Declaration, and everything went to hell ever since. And in order for that land to truly have peace, it needs to be one united state and return to its original state, which is Palestine, where the Jews, Muslims, and Christians equally under the law can live together peacefully, and not
Yeah.
one race or one religion having supremacy over others and depriving them of basic human rights. So no one just wakes up all of a sudden and say, okay, now I'm going to fight back against my oppressor. If you're doing something against somebody, then eventually they will fight back. So it needs to be one united state where everyone can live peacefully, like how it was before 1948.
Yep. I totally agree on that. I'm going to segue back a little bit, because this is certainly we're touching on things that have a lot of depth and other people have covered. I'm going to segue back a little to what's going on in Thailand and how, gee, isn't it funny that what's going on in Israel is happening now, and this story is, of Thai workers being kidnapped. is happening. Now, I don't know of any other nation who has had migrant workers in occupied Palestine that have been kidnapped. I'm not saying there aren't any. Likely there are. It would seem very odd to. I mean, something is definitely very, very strange if they actually, whoever did it, singled out a group of 24 Thai people. That I can't even begin to wrap my head around what exactly would be going on specifically there. But here's what needs to be known. Thailand recently elected a new prime minister, Seta Tawisin. And in Thailand, they just, usually call the politicians by their first names. So I'll just probably say Seta for short. But the thing is, Seta actually only came in second place in the election to Pita Lanjaranrat. Now, both Pita and Seta, although of two different parties, are both parties that are basically Wall Street puppets. Now, Pita's part, the guy who actually won, his party's kind of a little more obvious about it. Newer party, younger party. Seta's party, Puatai, has had prime ministers before who have been Western zealots and who the military has kicked out. Mainly a brother and sister pair that I've mentioned before on podcasts, Thaksin and Yingluck Shinawat. But what's really, and so it's strange to me that this is happening. Now, the former prime minister was Prayut Chan-o-cha, and Prayut took office initially in a military coup, which Thailand's had a lot of. And the person he threw out was Yingluck Shinawat, who was part of the same party that Seta is a part of. Most people thought that Yingluck was just kind of subbing in for a brother who had been kicked out almost a decade before, after being in the prime ministership for about 6 years, where he basically lived most of the time in Dubai and still does. There was actually a recent return of Thaksin to Thailand where, because he'd be facing charges if he came back, and he got arrested, but he's getting old, so they put him in some kind of cushy confinement. Haven't actually heard too much since then, so I'm not sure his current status. I think he's still in cushy lockup, but I could be wrong. But granted, the military, Prayut and a lot of the pro-military parties, they're nationalists. And while, like I said before, Thailand in general, they want to be able to get along with everybody. So when Thai nationalists see folks who, get elected, usually because they have a lot of Western money backing them, they'll be looking for an excuse to get rid of them. The problem is, but the military can be a little arrogant themselves, and they kind of basically fell asleep at the public relations wheel, and so kind of got their butt whooped in the elections. I like the idea, as much as I might like the idea of shut up and let your actions speak for you. Unfortunately, it doesn't work too well in electoral politics, and the people thought they just weren't being listened to, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of your political landscape. And it's just really, it's just something very odd to me about the fact that these workers get kidnapped. And now there were others who were killed in crossfire, as would be more believable. But like I said, the kidnapping in and of itself, very, very strange. And it's just very odd that this happens only a couple months after a Wall Street puppet gets into the prime ministership. There's just, I'm thinking, would this happen now? Does that mean that the whole story's bullshit, and maybe just some Thai workers got and all the supposed workers who got kidnapped, or in fact, were just shot and are already dead? That's possible. As much as you want to hold out hope that people are alive, and certainly, though, even if the kidnapping, whoever did it, is legit, and it probably is, given the fact that this very well could be a false flag, I certainly don't have much hope that they're going to come back alive. Because, simply because dead men tell no tales.
Well, yeah, that too, brother Matt, and I think you touched on good points. And we have to keep in mind about what happened in the past, that how they lied about in the 1990s with the Operation Desert Storm and Shield. How they had the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador who spoke perfect English, who testified before the American government about babies being taken out of incubators. That turned out to be a lie. They could
Yep.
justify the war. The WMDs in Iraq and Saddam, that turned out to be a lie. And 1 million Iraqis died and thousands of U.S. troops died. That turned out to be a lie. And even now, they talked about the 40 decapitated babies. Israel was using that story. And they've been caught recently using AI generated images that, oh, this happened to us, that happened to us. And a lot of the figures that they were given out were reported to be lies. And that's just the unfortunate reality we're dealing with. And the points that you showed, I mean, that's who these people are. By deception, thou shalt do war. But I think it's reversing because globally, not only do you see the BDS movement, which is to boycott Israeli products or boycott anyone who supports them, but now people globally, especially the younger generation, have come out onto the streets and are holding their representatives and their legal governments accountable that we are not going to tolerate this any further. So, with my prediction, I think the Zionist state of Israel will dissolve within this period of between 2020 and 2029. I think they're on their last legs and they know it. And so this is just the last act of desperation that they're trying to achieve. But they know it's game over for them. We know it, you know it, I know it, the world knows it.
No, certainly I do know it. The question is, can it be game over with them taking a minimal amount of innocent life with them?
That's how the bad guys operate, right? If I go down, I'm going to take as many down with me as possible. So I think
Yep.
that's what they're doing at the moment. They know by the time the end of the 2020s roll around, the 2030s roll around, it's over for them. It's just like how
Yeah.
when Jerusalem in the first Crusades was captured, right? And then 88 years later, you had this guy Saladin came out of nowhere and liberated the land. So if you look at the current timeline, once the 88 years are up for the current regime in that occupied land, which will be at the end of the 2029 at the end of 2020s and early 2030s, it'll be there. It's already beginning. The fruits are already beginning to ripen of how globally people are detesting the Zionists and Israelis. They have nowhere to go and nowhere to run, and they will answer for their crimes.
Oh, definitely they will, and I hope it happens sooner than later. But of course, again, with a minimal loss of innocent life. And I bring up what's going on in Thailand because as you put it, it certainly looks, and like I said, the story could be total bullshit, let's assume not. Let's assume it's true. Um, and that you really have 24 Thais who have been kidnapped. And if it is bullshit, I think it's probably just because they're already dead, not because they've created, like, the news agencies created some fake identities and all that. But it's obviously a attempt to get the Thai population on the Israeli side. And frankly, it isn't working. Not that they're necessarily pro-Palestinian either. I mean, Thais for the most part want to be fairly neutral. They want peace. They want people to get along. They think that, okay, if someone attacks you, you fight back, sure, but initiating a fight is stupid. I mean, really, even it's one of the reasons why I like it here is, Thais really don't see fighting as a way to solve a problem. It's just kind of not their thing. So this on the one hand, you have this attempt that is in some form or other, regardless of how much the truth has or hasn't been stretched. A form. It is a form of pro-Israel propaganda. Yet, but at the same time, it's not working. So where I do get concerned, and I hope that any Thai who is listening to this, who can maybe work with me to translate this into Thai, let's do it. I'm very concerned that the new leadership could very well take this to another level. Now, I still feel, even with that, I still feel a heck of a lot safer here than I do going into the U.S. Okay, so I'm really happy to be here. But that's not to say there couldn't be an incident as an attempt to try and turn the Thai public, which would not be easy to do at all, but try to turn them against the Palestinians. And because here's, like I said, Seta, he's a billionaire, and this is a guy, if you want to get an idea of his, who's pulling his strings, his first trip abroad after landing the prime ministership was to the U.S., but he didn't meet with any heads of state. He met with a bunch of various corporate CEOs. The one he spent the most time with were the CEOs of Goldman Sachs. I don't think I have to say much else there as to where his allegiances lie. And there's a lot he's doing that definitely already seems underhanded. In particular, one of his election promises was that every Thai citizen could apply to get a one-time donation of 10,000 baht, which is about the current exchange rate is about $300 US. At first, that was supposed to come in February. Now it's going to come in April. And he's meeting with various bankers to make sure they can secure the loan. So it might not happen. But I see something much worse at work. What's going on is it's going to be digital money. And any Thai 16 or over can apply for it as long as their bank account is like less than, I think, like 500,000 baht, which would be like $17,000. So if you got too much savings, you're not getting that. But which is fair enough. But it'd still be eligible to about 50 million citizens. And I certainly know plenty of people who could use that. make the, go, food's cheap here, that'll go a long way. The problem is, because they want to create safeguards to make sure people don't spend it on things like drugs and alcohol. So it's going to be strictly digital. You'll only have 6 months to spend it. And what's not being said is what it's going to take for a merchant to be able to receive the digital money as payment from someone who's gotten the grant. And I'm thinking, because one of the cool things here is you get so many street merchants, street vendors, and any Thai citizen can be a street vendor and has to either, if they're outside someone else's business, has to get their okay, and if it's on public thing, they just need an okay from the cops, who will give it to them 99% of the time. So I'm very concerned that if you have, say, a street vendor selling, let's take some people nearby me who I buy from. Street vendor sells hot style fried chicken, caddy corner from a 7-Eleven, and 7-Elevens are everywhere in Thailand. What happens when all these Thai citizens who have this extra digital money, what happens if the technology needed to receive this digital money is not available to the street vendor? Then the average Thai would probably go and buy something from a street vendor and maybe be going to the 7-Eleven for like an additional snack or a drink. Well, now they're going into 7-Eleven for their meal because they got to spend their digital money. And in a sense, this is just a scam to, what in the long run is going to completely fuck over the street vendor. And if there's one thing big business wants to do, it's fuck over small business. And that seems to be, now it's very unclear as to just how people can accept this digital money. So maybe enough public questioning would see to it that they made everybody able to accept it. But right now it is very, very unclear. So you have to be at least sniffing for the fact that this could be a scam, to basically, over the long run, give more money to the corporations and less to the small business. And that's definitely, that's a Western tactic. And certainly, that, the big food companies, who would want to invest in Thailand would want to put the street merchants out of business. And it's just the nature of the beast. Now, so we're seeing someone who's not, who's using Western tactics, potentially and highly likely to screw over the poor, albeit in a way that he tries to make it look like he's helping them. Who is going and meeting with Goldman Sachs? I mean, come on, this is someone who is obviously very much Western controlled, and yet there's one thing that has happened since that's been announced since he took over, that goes totally against that. And that's this. The country that sends the most tourists to Thailand is China. About 30% of tourists in Thailand are Chinese. Granted, there's a market of package tours that are targeted much more to the Chinese than pretty much any other tourist. You don't run into too many of them, the way you do people from whatever other countries, as much. But about 30%, as opposed to, say, the U.S., which only accounts for 3% of Thailand tourism. Well, due to an incident of a shooting at a mall in Bangkok, they're going, the new government has talked with China, and they're actually going to allow China to send some Chinese cops, to work with the Thai cops in touristy areas. What exactly those are have not been spelled out yet, as far as I know. But now, and to me, this is a very, very questionable decision, whoever made it. And regardless of what kind of relations you have with that country, to basically put foreign cops on your own soil is extremely risky and volatile, and usually just plain unwelcome. And so I get a figure when you have a new prime minister who's very Western leaning. And of course, the West doesn't like China. They see him as a threat and a competitor and all that crap. And yet he's bringing Chinese cops into going to bring Chinese cops into Thailand. He hasn't done it yet. It's just been announced. That's almost like he's hoping for an incident to happen.
Yeah.
And if he's hoping for an incident to happen with Chinese cops, what's he hoping will happen with Israel when we get this story going on about 24 Thai workers kidnapped, allegedly by Hamas? I still
Yep.
feel a lot safer here than in the U.S., but this does not look good.
Yes. That's absolutely right, my brother. I think the way that you laid it out, people with common sense and basic empathy and understanding should know the situation that we're dealing with here. And it's just like how many American police, they get trained by a lot of these Israeli guys as well, and why they're so aggressive with the public and how they're channeling in that same aggressiveness on the Thai side as well. And I believe as time goes on, hopefully as the younger generation becomes more and more aware, since they will be the inheritors of the world, that we will see a lot of these people held accountable and some truth and justice prevail. And the same is happening here in the US, where the young people are fed up and they're saying that the current representatives and government do not represent us and our values. They represent a time and a generation which we are not compatible with now. So people are saying that younger people need to be in Congress, Senate, and the government, and anyone that's like 50 or above or 60 or above, they're not in touch with reality and not in touch with the current issues the current generation is facing. So hopefully, my brother, as time goes on, we will see something positive prevail out of all of this, as we have to trust the divine plan of God as well in the good times and bad times of life.
Well, as the saying goes, have faith in Allah, but tie your camel.
Yes, we must be
You know,
prepared at the same time. And I think what you're doing here is, by educating the public, is a part of that, tying the camel, where we trust the plan, but we are also educating self and others about what's going on and what they can do to make a difference.
oh, definitely, definitely. And when when you have a population like Thailand who wants peace, who wants people to get along, to have a good time, to chill, to not get too pissy, all that sort of thing. Not to say that they won't get pissy at bad treatment, like anybody will. But it's tricky because it is. And on a good hand, Thai people aren't gonna buy the crazy conspiracy bullshit that's so right in the West right now. It's been sold, like to this MAGA crowd and all this QAnon horse shit. They're not really gonna go for that for the most part. But it's not to say there aren't, people in high places who pull some strings that need to be known about. And, it's definitely looking like that could be the case. And certainly, like I said, I hope that any Thai listening who wants to do this with me and, translate this into Thai, work with me to translate this into Thai. Not that when I say that, they're the ones translating. I just be like maybe re-saying what I'm saying as they translate it or something like that. Could be worked. But yeah, I mean, I think this is, a big concern, and because people don't want that, and if they do realize, it's like, hey, we don't want this crap, So, and I definitely have, I do definitely know some Thai who, are concerned about the whole situation. And former student even put up an article that was, well, just plain not true in a lot of ways. But, I just said, well, no, it's actually more kind of like this. And he's like, oh, okay, thanks. Um, I've definitely seen some pro-Palestinian sentiment out of the younger generation here. Not huge though, because normally they're just living they're just living their own life. But they are, and while they might not fully understand much about international politics, they're not against it, you know. Because they are hopeful about the world and about humanity, however ugly it might sometimes get. And that's something that's definitely lacking in the West. Because even though you talk about, and you're totally right, that the younger generation's totally fed up, the younger generation also doesn't have a vision of where to go. That's what's keeping them back from taking over. It's being able to have a vision to all rally behind. Now I won't say that there's necessarily a huge vision to rally behind, but the potential for it here, is much better, because you're easier to get behind. It's easier. The preconditions of finding a vision to get behind are easier when you have a hopeful outlook about the future. And most people see that overall things are getting better, even if in some ways there are always things that are getting worse too. And there's this and that. I think the overall future outlook is definitely more positive here, and that doesn't mean that people who have that are unsympathetic to those who are suffering and those who are oppressed. I was recently down in Malaysia. Some very similar dynamics there, except there being a Muslim majority country. There's a lot of pro-Palestinian support. Even to the point, and this might have even been, because as far as I know about international law, when it comes to boats, this might have been illegal, but the local authorities weren't caring. You had some, little tiny boats who do 8 to 10 people on a little tour around the islands in Langkawi, and instead of flying Malaysian flags, they're flying Palestinian flags. Now, as far as I know, that's technically illegal. To put a flag on your boat of another country is a no-no, just for bureaucratic purposes. But I didn't see the local authorities complaining, and this was only a little over a week ago, so they probably didn't just start doing it. So so there you can have a sympathy with the oppressed and a solidarity with the oppressed, and still have a positive outlook for the future. If anything, you probably need to have both.
I think so too, brother Matt. And I think having a positive outlook and having a game plan for the future are part of the essential things that one needs in his or her life to shape the future. And we inherit the future, or we inherit the present today from those who fought for it. And then the coming generations will inherit that for what we do today. So we owe that to the coming generations ahead. And I think you're right, my brother. I hope something positive comes out of all of this. And I think that would be my conclusion on this, is that I hope people are able to pierce through the propaganda and know what's right and what's wrong and what's being used to divide and conquer you as a human population, and what's there that's there to bring you together. So as 2024 comes along, it's going to be, I know, a lot of craziness here in America because of the presidential election, and it's a major presidential election, which will determine what direction this country and the world will go towards. So let's hope it's a peaceful one for all parties involved. And let's see, my brother, we just have to, with the life that God has given us, we just have to try our best day to day in all that we can. The rest, the divine plan is there. But like you said, we must tie our camel and prepare either way, whatever happens.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
any concluding thoughts from you, my brother, to end this podcast?
No, I think I kind of rambled on enough of a conclusion already. Unless you got any specific questions for me.
I think that should be it. And I think we can conclude this until our next podcast together.
All right, sounds good. Nor alaikum, brother.
Nur alaikum, brother Matt. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And until next time, brother Matt Douglas joins us again.